So now it's time for the next presenter. Fábio e Pilar estão aí? Estou vendo o Pilar.
Oi, boa tarde, sim, estamos aqui.
Ok, então, a próxima apresentação é Evidentials em Guajajára, Fábio Duarte e Pilar Chamorro.
Obrigada, Cristina. Ok. Tá, todo mundo consegue ver a apresentação? Tá ótimo, obrigada. Então, a apresentação vai ser em inglês, tá? So this is a work in progress that my colleague Fábio Duarte and I have been working on for a little bit of time. So we are working on evidentials in Guajajára, and the primary concern of our research is to report on the evidentiality system of this variety of the Tenetejara language on the basis of existing typological research. So the main questions we wanted to address are A, B, and C. So what are the grammatical means employed to express evidentiality in Guajajára? What are the semantic parameters of evidentiality in this variety? And is evidentiality in Guajajára fused or interacts with other grammatical categories? And I can answer already number 3, C, and say yes, because it interacts with tense or something similar to tense, okay? And we will see that soon. So what's evidentiality? The basic definition of evidentiality is the grammatical expression of information source, right? And I'll I'm trying to, okay, there you go. So just one example from our data set here to show what evidentiality is, right? So in 2, we have the sheep died a long time ago, I was told. So sheep reportative, Z, Kaipo remote pass, and we have 2 different markers, right, that different speakers use to convey reported information and to convey also remote past and die, right? So the chief died a long time ago, I was told, right? So this is the kind of information evidential markers convey. So before going to the data, I'll introduce a little bit the language and the varieties. So the Guajajára people are part of the larger community of the Tenetejara people, and the population is about 25,000. The number of speakers is unknown because it depends on the villages. Some villages, everybody speaks the language, and in other villages, the speakers, children are losing the language, so it is hard to know. The language belongs to the Tupi stock, the Tupi-Guarani family, right? The Tronco Tupi, Tupi-Guarani family, and it belongs to the Ramo 4, right? So Tenetejara has 2 broad varieties. One is the Tembe, which is spoken in Pará, Maranhão, and the other one is the Guajajára, which is the one we are investigating, and this is spoken in Maranhão. The basic word order of Guajajára is VSO in main clauses and SOV in embedded clauses. It's an ergative and absolutive language, and it encodes also person and number, which is expressed with proverbial affixation, and it has no gender marking. The data comes from narratives and acceptability judgments and some elicitation. We give certain context to speakers, so to elicit a response and see if they use an evidential marker given that context. And the variety we describe here is that of the Arariboya and Baja do Corda regions in the state of Maranhão. So some of the terminology we will be using as we look at the data I'm going to be explaining right now some of these terms. So we will use the term the scope proposition, which is also called the prejacent or the target proposition. And the scope proposition conveys, right, is the information uttered or preferred by the speaker. The evidential proposition is the proposition conveying the type of source of evidence. Then the evidence source is where the evidence comes from. So where the information of the scope proposition was acquired. And the source situation refers to the situation where the scope proposition was acquired.
Ele.
Yes.
Aumenta pouquinho os slides, tá pouquinho. Aumente pouquinho os slides, tá pouquinho.
Oh, are they very small? Okay, I can switch to the PDF because this is a PowerPoint and I don't think I can change the size.
So go ahead, no problem.
Okay, but if more people have issues with this, I can switch to the PDF. So these are the categories we will be looking at for Guajajára. So the first main category is the first-hand. So it's information acquired through sensory evidence, visual and non-visual. So the eventuality is perceived or witnessed with one of the senses. And then we have the experiential and performative, which we will include in first-hand also as a subcategory of first-hand. So experiential performative, the eventuality is performed or experienced by the speaker. Then we have the reportative or the hearsay category where the information was heard from others. And I want to note on quotative, which is reported evidentiality also is reported information with an overt reference to the authorship of the quoted source. In Guajajára, there is no quotative evidential marker. We speakers use parentheticals, and that's illustrated in example 1. So my brother returned, he lied to me. So after the comma, we have say false to me, right? So, and the last category is the deductive or inferential category. So deduction, the information conveyed by the speaker is deduced from visible or tangible evidence, generally a resultant state that resulted from a previous event. And the inference is the speaker infers the information on the basis of their own existing knowledge. So most the data we are presenting today belongs to the deductive category. If we want to keep those two categories apart, right? And the status of this category is actually less clear than the other ones because there's variation among the speakers and the intuitions are just hard to interpret sometimes. So we tentatively have the Ra'a marker for the deductive. It's a today past, and it's also used to convey deduction, and a zero, perhaps zero marking or non-marking at all, okay, for before today past. So let's look at some data. So for the reportative evidentiality, we have Zekaipo Sekwehe. So they convey reportative evidence and remote past. These two markers are generally used to narrate mythological stories and eventualities that took place in a remote past, could be like childhood or even before childhood. So in 2, we have the chief died a long time ago, I was told. So this co-proposition here is the chief died a long time ago, and the evidential proposition is the speaker heard or was told that the is co-proposition. Right. So the syntactic position of these markers is second position right after a first constituent, full constituent. The second marker is Zapo. And so this marker conveys reportative evidence. it doesn't convey any temporal information, so in contrast to the other one. So in 3, we have a past temporal reference before today. The chief died, I was told. In 4, we have also past temporal reference for today. The chief died, I was told, but it happened today. So that's given, that information is given in the context. In 5, we have present temporal reference. The chief is visiting right now in order to see us. And in 6, we have future temporal reference. Tomorrow, the chief is coming in order to see us, I was told to. Okay, so this is all reported. The next category is firsthand direct evidentiality. And these markers also conflate evidentiality plus tense or temporal information. So Kakwe is a direct evidential and distant past, and Kakwe is a direct evidential recent past marker. And example 7A and B illustrate, visual or auditory source of information for both distant and recent past. So in 7A, we have long ago, the chief killed a Jaguar, right? We have Kakwe. And in B, we have the chief killed a Jaguar in the village and recently. So here the evidential proposition could be that the speaker saw that the chief killed a Jaguar in the village, or that the speaker heard the chief killing the Jaguar in the village. These 2 markers can also be used for experiential or performative evidentiality. And we offer an example in A with Jessica Quay. Where did you get married? The speaker says, I married in my wife's village a long time ago. So this was in 1998. So the speaker decided to use Kakwe for distant past. Kwe also alone conveys immediate past in addition to first-hand evidence. So in 9, we have, what was your father-in-law doing just now? And the speaker says he was just clearing his land. So the speaker decides to use Kwe. So the evidential proposition is that the speaker saw or heard his father-in-law clearing his land. So Kwe does not convey immediate past when it co-occurs with Ra'a and Ri'i. So Ra'a and Ri'i convey past time reference. Ra'a for today past, and Ri'i is more like a general past marker, but also a before today marker in certain contexts. So in 10, we have this morning a Jaguar came to the village. So Ra'a, Kwe Ra'a, right? And yesterday a Jaguar came to the village. So we have Kwe Ri'i. So in these 2 cases, we see that Kwe does not convey immediate past. In 12A, the source of information is not specified, and it can be followed by 12B and 12C. So 12B and C show that Kwe, in fact, can be used to convey direct evidence, not just visual evidence, but also heard evidence. So in 12A, we have yesterday Jaguar came to the village. In B, I saw it. And in C, I heard it.
Pilar, just there's 5 minutes left.
5 minutes, okay. So in we can skip the experiential performative of Kwe. The next one is Ruku. Ruku is a recent past with experiential performative evidential meaning. So we have the question, what did you do today? I clear my land, Ruku. Or what did you do yesterday? I clear my land with Ruku. Also, for the deductive inferential evidentiality, we are putting forward the hypothesis that there is no marking, right, or maybe xeromorphing instead of Ri'i, because Ri'i can co-occur with all first-hand evidentials, and that's why we disregard Ri'i as the marker that encodes deductive or inferential evidentiality. So in 17 we have whoa, it rained a lot yesterday. So the evidential source is that in the morning the speaker saw that the ground was very wet, and the evidential proposition is that the speaker deduced from this that it rained a lot yesterday. So for today past, we have ra'e or ra'a also, and the example 18 shows this. Where did your father go just now? And the speaker says, he went to Arami, his motorcycle is not here. So that's the evidence, right, that the speaker shows to say that, you know, based on this evidence, I deduce that my father went to Arami, right? So in chart, the table 1 here shows a summary of the distribution of these evidential markers. So we have reportative, first-hand, sensorial, experiential, and deduction. And we have also remote past, distant past, recent past, immediate past, and non-past. So Zapo is the only one that is not associated with temporal information, and all the other ones are associated with some temporal remoteness distinction. So the observations we can draw, and the preliminary analysis we want to put forth are summarized here. So evidential meaning and temporal reference. Guajajára evidential markers contribute information about the source of the information communicated by speakers. They do not locate the time of the source situation, the situation where the scope proposition was acquired, but rather they temporarily constrain the target proposition. We also want to say that Guajajára evidentials contribute not at issue content, and we offer example 19 as a piece of evidence for that. So we negate, when we negate the chief, so chief negation die, so the negation is circumflex, que, the chief didn't die, so that's the interpretation we get, where que takes a scope over negation, and we don't get this interpretation. It is not the case that I saw the chief die. So negation is not taking the scope over que, okay? So we take that Guajajára, given the data we gather, we were able to class Guajajára as a B1 system, a 3-term evidential system, including direct, inferred, and reported source of information. Guajajára conflates evidentiality with temporal remoteness distinctions. However, in contrast with other 2P Guarani languages, Guajajára conflates evidentiality with temporal remoteness distinctions, but it has a 3-way, right, evidential system. So the final remarks are that so Guajajára evidential temporal system distinguish between first-hand, reportative, and inferential deductive categories, which in turn are associated to remote, distant, recent, and immediate past distinctions. And additionally, Guajajára has the reportative evidential support, instantiating evidentiality without any temporal contribution. So the goal of this study is to contribute to ongoing cross-linguistic research on evidentiality by reporting on a language whose evidential system has not been previously described. So I'll finish here and leave the room for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pilar.
Sorry
Andres,
for speeding up so much, trying to make sense of
Andres has a question in the chat. He asked, did you say that there was a contrast between an inferential and a conjectural?
Inferential and deductive. That's the contrast that I so we don't know actually. I wanted to present those two, the distinction right between inferential and deductive, because none of the data we got has any instances of the inferential kind. It's more like deductive based on some resulting evidence, right, that the speaker sees or perceives in some way, and then the speaker uses ra'a or doesn't use any of the other markers. So we don't know yet if if there is any clear distinction, if we can draw a line between those two, or we can just collapse them together. Does that answer the question?
I think we may move on to another following question from Ellen Contini Morava, who says, how does the reportative form that is marked as dubitative differ from the other reportative forms?
Which one is it? It's the Zapo? Because there is three, right? There is the Zekaipo, Zekwehe. Zekaipo and Zekwehe are used indistinctly. There is just in some villages, speakers prefer one or the other, but we haven't found any difference in their contribution. Zapo is different from Zekwehe and Zekaipo in that it doesn't contribute any temporal information. So it can be used to convey reported information about events that happened in the past or that are happening right now or will happen in the future.
Great. And the next question in the chat is from Bruna, who asks, in cases where the speaker is talking about something he felt, like pain, thirst, or cold, do you know which evidential is used?
No, we don't. We don't have any data about those feelings or emotions or any tactile, right, situations. Yeah, that's something that we need to look into. We have data on perceived as smell. We didn't add any example here, but yeah, they use the same for smell as they use for visual and heard.
Thank you. And perhaps, Claudio, I am not very good at reading Portuguese out loud, if you would like to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Pilar. I'm wondering if you have, well, the remoteness in the past is not so fixed. It's more fluid. But have you observed how fluid it's with evidentials? When you have someone that, when you collect data with someone that already know the story, for example, in panel languages, we have remoteness also in the evidentials, and it has a correlation. So I don't know if you observed it in the data.
Wait, I didn't hear that word, remoteness and?
The degree of remoteness, the distinction with one another, and how it is, how can I say, how evidentials can, the difference can be less fixed and more fluid, more, it's not so exactly the difference from one degree to another when you have the reportative or whatever.
Okay, yeah, it's more fluid. Yeah, I'm reading your question here. Yeah, and it is hard to, there is no way to, at least in this language, I don't think there's a way to delineate, like a more clear distinction in terms like of cycles, like years, right? Or days. The only clear distinction we were able to find was between Ra'a and Ri'i, which are not clearly evidential markers, but more like temporal markers. Although Ra'a, we are hypothesizing that it's probably both, right? An evidential and deductive or inferential marker. So those two are, so Ra'a is a hodiernal or today past, And RE is a more general past, but also when the speaker knows that the event didn't happen today, so RE is used for before today past. When the speaker doesn't know if the event occurred today or before today, then RE is like the general marker. But for the other markers, the Kakwe, Rakwe, Kwe. So Kwe is the only one among the direct evidentials where we know that if it appears alone without Ra'a or Re'i, then it is an immediate past. So the event has had to happen like just a few minutes, like right now or a few minutes ago, okay? So that's the most clear one, but the other ones are more vague, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Yeah, actually,
Adam.
if I may, if
Yes,
there is still
Carolina.
time. Thank you very much for a really interesting talk. Would it be possible to see this example again where you have direct evidential with remote past? I was just wondering about that because it's not usual to have direct knowledge of remote past events. So, and I didn't catch exactly how you explained that.
The Kakwe, I called it distant. So instead of calling the remote past, I call it distant past to distinguish it from the remote past that are reported, right? Past, because that's true, right? Like it's a distant past, and it could be during the childhood of an adult, right? So that's when we use Kakwe. Speakers use Kakwe to talk about events that happen remotely or in a distant past. Yeah.
Thank you. It's clear now. Thanks.
And Adam, would you like to ask your question as the last one?
Sure. Thank you very much. Pilar, thank you for the talk. I had a question. Well, first, I guess I will just say in response to the question that was just asked, in Tupari, there's a distant past from like decades ago, and then an ancient past, which is before the speaker's birth. And as you can imagine, the ancient past has to co-occur with non-witnessed evidential morphology, but the distant past that can be up to decades ago can occur with or without the evidential morphology, depending on whether the speaker saw the event in question. My question about the data you've shown today is, I don't believe you mentioned this, whether the language exhibits interrogative flip, whether the deictic orientation of the evidential morphology switches from the speaker to the addressee in questions.
No, I haven't talked about that because we don't have any data on those particular questions. Yeah.
Okay.
We only have data on declaratives. We haven't pursued yet interrogatives. So yeah, unfortunately, and I don't have any idea, no data yet to even hypothesize something about it.
For my experience trying to figure out how interrogative flip worked in Tupari, I found it very helpful to ask sort of basic biography questions. So things like, where were you born? Versus where did you grow up? And so on and so forth. You get interesting contrasts when speakers make distinctions between like who raised them when they remember being raised versus who nursed them or breastfed them, which took place before they were cognizant. I've found that by asking biography questions and speakers saying, well, no, you really have to ask the question this way or that way, it's easy to figure out where the evidentials are required in questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for giving me this, because it's hard to elicit data on evidence.
Super hard to elicit. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And it's like my colleague Fabio, he speaks the language more fluently. I don't. So it is hard to be there with them, right, and try to interact and pick up on how they use the evidentials. So that's something as an assignment for the future when we can travel.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you for the advice on how to gather that data, type of data.